and welcome to episode 3 of Below the Hospital, an AAMI podcast on sterile processing and the issues that sterile processing technicians face today. I am your host, Garland-Rhea Grisby, Interim Assistant Director for Sterile Processing and Endoscope Service Manager at Kaiser Permanente. I'm also a long-standing AAMI member. In this podcast, I interview folks from around the industry about sterile processing and ask what some may consider hard questions about how we can uplift the profession and protect our patients at the same time. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Terra Kremer. Terra is a director of microbial quality at Johnson & Johnson. She is also co-chair of AAMI's Water Quality for Reprocessing Medical Devices Working Group. And Terra recently earned her PhD at the Technological University of the Shannon and also presented at Kilmer 2025. Terra, congratulations on those accomplishments.
Thank you.
Now, through her work with AAMI, she was instrumental in the development and production of ANSI AAMI ST108, water for the processing of medical devices. Terra, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Garland.
Is there anything else you want to add to your bio before we get into the questions?
No, I think that you pretty much covered it. But I do have a very deep love of sterile processing, and my PhD was really focused on sterile processing activities, primarily on cleaning and the effectiveness of cleaning. So, I really hope that the information that the research was generated will be helpful to sterile processing community as a whole.
Definitely. Thank you. So let's get right into it. Can you tell me and our listeners why water quality is so important in sterile processing?
Absolutely. I think that it's important to really understand that water quality is variable depending on the geographical region in which the water might be located. So it looks very different where, I'm from in Salt Lake City, Utah versus where I live now in New Jersey. And we really have to make sure that when we are setting up processing parameters with water quality, that we have that baseline equivalence so that we're always starting with the same water quality going into it, regardless of where you live geographically. And this is really important, not just for patient safety, because if we're using inappropriate water quality, it can affect the cleaning process, it can affect the sterilization process, it can affect the disinfection process, which ultimately can mean that we are compromising the patient safety with the devices that go through the processing cycle. In addition to that, poor water quality can actually change the functionality of the device, where you see components within the water that over time can strip away the materials and basically make them harder to clean and sterilize and disinfect in the future. So as we think about water quality and the development of ST108, the intent from this was really to make sure that we were giving everybody a baseline of what water quality levels actually meant, so that when they are evaluating the treatment options that might work best for their particular purpose, they can always get to the end quality. And regardless of where you live geographically, we have the same water quality for every type of processing.
That is good to know. And that's a good segue into the next question. So is there a hierarchy of water quality that sterile processing practitioners should know about?
In ST108, we talk about 3 levels of water quality. There's utility water, critical water, and steam. And these are the defined water quality levels with defined acceptance criteria that really helps us distinguish how they're different from other types of water. There's actually quite a range of water quality in medical device manufacturing and pharmaceutical manufacturing, and then other types of manufacturing as well, where you might hear terminology like purified water or USP quality water or filtered water or RODI water. And as we were sort of looking as a committee how to standardize these types of water quality and what was appropriate for sterile processing, we wanted to make sure that we weren't overburdening the process by asking for, a water quality like sterile water or, pharmaceutical grade water that really isn't quite important for that activity, but that the water quality that we defined is fit for purpose. So with an ST108, actually, you'll hear a lot of different terms for water. Feed water is one, tap water is another, but ultimately the three categories of water quality of utility, critical, and steam, those are the only ones with defined quality requirements that get us to that point that we can make sure that they're fit for purpose for sterile processing, and that we're not asking for additional treatment that maybe is not necessary.
Well, I'll tell you what, as a user, we definitely appreciate what your group did and not being so rigid with the sterile water, because oftentimes facilities and departments are unable to accomplish what's written in certain standards. So thank you. Now, with regard to the patients, are there risk factors to patients created by using water of insufficient quality?
Potentially. So we can't always say there's a direct one-to-one relationship, but think about it from a perspective of your home use of water. So if you live in a geographical area that has hard water, and as you're using your shower head over time, that shower head will get gunked up with crystals, salt crystals, right, that don't come off easily, and you have to use special cleaning agents to be able to remove them in order to get your water pressure back. The same thing happens within our sterile processing departments. And unfortunately, those pieces of equipment that we rely on so heavily to be able to facilitate the cleaning process, like washer disinfectors, are very similar to, things that we use routinely at our home life, like shower heads, where they have spray arms that have very tiny holes where water has to jet out. And that pressure in which the water comes out of those arms is a critical component to the effective cleaning process. So I say potentially, because if you have a situation where your water quality is such that the chemical components in they interfere with your cleaning agent enzymes, for instance, or the processing equipment itself, it can affect your ability to clean, especially in very hard to reach areas of the device. Those complex features that maybe you can't actually see visually, but you're relying on the ability for water to get into those hard to reach surfaces and then get back out. If you have components in your water that sort of prevent that activity, your cleaning process is jeopardized. You can also see the same thing on the sterilization side, where maybe you have a situation where the water purity that is coming into your steam generator is basically depositing things into the steam that can penetrate into the packaging and land on the device. So it's really important, especially where we have, implants that get reprocessed over and over again within our instrument sets. They sit there, and if you're constantly exposing them to components like hard water, or even different chemistries like a high level of chlorine or pH ranges that aren't really designed for those metals, you can actually see failure in some of those implants, as well as the instruments that go along with it. So where I say that there's a potential impact, it really comes from the fact that there might not be a one-to-one relationship, but sort of a cascade of unfortunate events that could happen that could impact patient safety.
Thank you. And that basically touched on my next question about the risk to devices such as surgical instruments or endoscopes.
Well, endoscopes are another thing entirely that maybe I could just mention quickly. So we go through all of this effort to clean those, let's say, scopes that are high-level disinfected. We go through the great efforts to make sure that we're cleaning them effectively. And then we go one step further to make sure we're disinfecting them. But after that disinfection process, if we're rinsing them with poor water quality, we just kind of put back everything we just took off. So all of that effort we did to make these devices safe for patient use, if we're rinsing them with water that has microorganisms in there, and then we don't effectively dry it, basically you could be introducing contaminants that have an opportunity to proliferate and actually create more of a problem than what you just solved.
Thank you. So for those that are out there listening that are processing endoscopes, please check your water quality. So let's go into the next question. Now, going into ST108, let's talk a little bit about that. Now, as co-chair of the committee that produced the document, what does ST108 provide for folks in the SPD?
Oh, having the opportunity to co-chair and develop ST108 was definitely one of the highlights of my career, because it brought together so many different types of individuals. It brought the water treatment specialists. It brought in equipment manufacturers like washer disinfectors or sterilizers. And then it also brought in the users and test laboratories all together so that we could talk around how we're going to develop this document so that it is as useful to the user as possible. And when we started this journey, it was an evolution of taking TIR 34, which was just an informational document on water quality, and transforming it into ST108. And when we did that, we really tried to focus on what the user would need and walking them through the what, so that they had a really good foundation of what they needed to accomplish. But then in the annexes, we kept in a lot of the information and added more information to really help on how. So we have the what in the normative section, and then the how in the informative section. And by using these sections together, it gives the sterile processing department the authority that they've never had before, to have a seat at the table at those critical decision-making events, where they have executive authority on should they spend the money on actually looking at advancements within their water quality. And for the first time, this document says not only does SPD have to have a seat at the table, but they have to have a voice, because they have a responsibility to actually monitor how effective the water treatment process is. And that's what we're hoping that the community really likes about this document, is that it is taking that piece and saying SPD is really the end user and the responsible party. And so they have to have a voice within the executive leadership within the healthcare system to make sure they have the right equipment, tools, and supplies to do their job and make sure that everything comes out safe for the patient.
That is great. The people below the hospital have a voice. So you mentioned all of the stakeholders that was involved in ST108. So what about stakeholders in facilities? Who should be involved in setting policies and procedures related to water quality in healthcare facilities?
Oh, I love that question, because we spent a lot of time debating this as a committee. And we actually have a whole section within ST108 that talks about roles and responsibilities. And it gives examples of the type of person that needs to be part of that multidisciplinary team, which is a collection of individuals with competencies that complement each other. So you have a holistic approach to a water management program. So we have individuals like, you have to have the person with the executive authority that has the purchasing power and holds the money. You got to have that person. You also have to have your infection preventionists, because they're going to bring something to the table that really helps you understand the impact of the decision you're making. And it really will help you drive that risk assessment that will give you the ability to have a fit for purpose program. You also have SPD, as I've mentioned. They have to have a strong voice. You have facilities and utilities, whoever actually manages the water treatment equipment within your facility. And then, others that maybe have to assist with the process. So, if you have another department that does sort of that monitoring and overseeing of programs, making sure that you really have a cohesive team that is meeting regularly, so that when problems arise, you actually have the right people in the room to deal with those problems and come up with a solution that makes sense for your facility, because there's not one right approach to everything.
Thank you. Thank you. We definitely needed to hear that. And thank you for having that section in ST108. So does ST108 address extenuating circumstances like boil water advisories or service interruptions?
It does. It absolutely does. So we have an entire section within the document that really talks about what if things go wrong. So how do you perform an investigation? How do you look at testing and use that to your ability to demonstrate you're either in a state of control or you need to have a mitigation activity to address the risk that you've identified. So there's some examples in there, and there's some detail within the annex that not only talks about investigations, but also risk assessments and how you deal with some of those issues.
So what should folks do if they have a specific question about applying an AAMI standard like ST108?
Well, I think that that's a really great question, and we would always recommend reaching out to AAMI staff directly. They do a really nice job making sure that they're coordinating to get the answer that you need. So they will often, I field questions all the time, as does my co-chair, Erin Kyle. And we will do our best to answer the question based on the information that we have from ST108. And if we can't answer the question, we might go to a subject matter expert that was within the committee to actually drive that answer. But all of that communication is managed through the AAMI staff, as they're so helpful in making sure that we are addressing the right questions and getting it back to the user in a very timely manner. That's one of our responsibilities and our commitments as co-chairs, is to make sure not only in the development process, but also to be here as a resource to those users.
Awesome. So is there any upcoming work with AAMI related to water quality and sterile processing?
There sure is. So one of the pieces of feedback that we've already been getting back from users as ST108 has been published and is now working to be adopted within sites is we have more questions. We have more questions. We want more guidance in various areas. So we are actually actively working on a technical information report, which is meant to complement ST108. And the idea behind this was to really make it more informational with more checklists and guidance to kind of guide you through some of the newer concepts that are in ST108. Because we realized that some of the things that we introduced, like installation, operational, and performance qualification, and then those routine monitoring pieces that come after that, there's been a lot of questions on, we've never had to do this before. What's the right way to actually go about executing that type of activity? And how do we make sure that we have it documented within our quality management system so that when we are asked, we can easily pull up those records and provide them to any, agency that's looking at your particular program. So this document is currently under development. We are in the initial stages of it, where we have a task group that has been working on what the content might look like. Right now, we're at the stage where we're actually asking for users within the committee to give us feedback before it goes into official working draft for the committee, because we want that real dialogue back with the equipment manufacturers that have that really deep technical knowledge and the users that have to apply that knowledge. And we want to make sure it's really usable. So what we're doing right now is sort of that informal feedback gathering. We intend to have the first working draft of that document ready by this summer, and in preparation for the fall AAMI Standards Week, where we can actually dive into the content and get some really good information. So Garland, I would really love to say to your users, if you really want to be part of this process, now is the time. You can join AAMI as a member of the working group and actually participate on this standard this guidance document, because as a user, you guys have been really going through and trying to figure out how to apply ST108, and you have a perspective that we need as we're developing this new document. So I encourage anyone who wants to join the committee to get involved. Our meetings are hybrid, so you don't have to be here on site. You can call in. We make it very easy for you to do that. And we want to have as much participation from the users as possible.
Well, thank you, Terra. That was my final question. I want to thank you for taking this time to sit and chat with us on episode 3 of Below the Hospital. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, folks, I hope this episode has been useful. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. If you want to support the podcast, you can find us at Below the Hospital on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and AAMI Array. Until then, see you when I see you.